Welcome to Voice for Infection Prevention, where we explore the latest developments, challenges, and insights in the field of infection prevention and control. With a passion for promoting patient safety and healthcare excellence, we're excited to bring you engaging discussions with experts, leaders, and innovators in the field. So whether you're a seasoned professional or just beginning your journey in infection prevention, welcome to the conversation. This is Voice for Infection Prevention.
Welcome back to Voice for Infection Prevention. I'm your host, Jacob Hutcherson. Today's episode is a special one as we'll sit down with the next generation IP, Rashida Conway. Rashida serves as a Director of Infection Prevention at Kaiser Permanente. In this episode, we're privileged to delve into Rashida's wealth of knowledge and experience, focusing on her invaluable advice and insights for aspiring professionals in the infection prevention field. We'll embark on a journey through Rashida's career path, uncovering how she navigated challenges and seek her recommendations for those embarking on similar journeys. From her personal experience to the strategy she advocates, Rashida's guidance is indispensable for anyone looking to make their mark in infection prevention. So, without further ado, let's dive into our conversation with Rashida Conway and explore the pathways to success in infection prevention.
This episode is sponsored by Clutch Recruitment, the leading recruiting firm in the country, recruiting exclusively within infection prevention and control.
How did you find infection prevention to start with? And then how did you end up kind of in your first position?
Yeah.
Take me through that.
So I'm an ER nurse by background, and I was at a very high acuity ER in San Bernardino, California, so in Southern California, a very underserved population and really minimal resources, to be very honest with you, where I was at. I mean, the team and the culture was incredible, the physicians incredible, the autonomy that we were given also amazing. Like my experience there was unmatched, but I became a charge nurse and I got involved in process improvement projects and quality, and really started kind of seeing nursing, but healthcare in general from a different aspect. You know, as a ER nurse, you're kind of just taught, like, you turn over things quickly, you insert devices just because you can and you should, just to make things move quicker. And I really wasn't seeing the harm that could be causing, or was never really, like, my mind wasn't trained to go that way. Nursing school, I don't think really prepares you to know the depth of what infection prevention does. I mean, they talk about it at a surface level of isolation precautions and things like that, but very naive going into the world of infection prevention. So I got into process improvement projects with quality, and we were really working to lower our Foley catheter insertion in our ER. And so I kind of, took that project on, and the CNE at the time had approached me and told me that there was going to be an opening in infection prevention, because I had expressed I was enjoying it and interest. And I was telling her, more long-term, that I think it was something I might look into. I was really enjoying bedside still, was enjoying being a charge nurse. And then she had told me that opportunity was going to present, and, said maybe you should see and explore it if this is something you actually even have interest in. So I just finished grad school at the time, and started as a new IP. At the time, the structure where the organization I was at was a manager, and then an IP, which was me, 342 beds and 2 ambulatories on our license. So it was quickly baptism by fire. Within like 8 months into the position, the manager had left, and that position dissolved, so it was just me. And then quickly after that was the pandemic. And so I, really, like I said, naive going in, I quickly realized that I was responsible for the quality of the air of the facility all the way directly to the care that was being delivered to the patient. And in the ER, you don't have a ton of control of the outcomes of a patient. It's you can do your absolute best, but you see the worst of the worst. And in infection prevention, if you have the right practices instituted from just a very foundational aspect, you really can control a lot of the outcomes of a patient and ensure they're receiving safe, effective, quality care. And that concept really intrigued me, and I kind of just took that and ran with it and just kept seeing, oh, there's so much more to learn from a construction aspect, high level disinfection, and then the pandemic. And that's kind of what really drove my, I guess, passion for it, but also fear. I was a brand new IP. I mean, I still very much consider myself a novice. It's going on 6 years of being in the profession, and I'm still just learning so much. But that's kind of how it, evolved. And I was a lone IP up until this past month, and I learned so much at a very old facility, and just very grateful for all the opportunities that I was presented with there.
Well, let me ask a couple questions, and then make sure I understand this. Your first position, you had a manager there with you for 8 months, and then that manager left?
Yeah, so she had
correct? Okay.
Yeah, she had gone on an LOA, and then the healthcare organization I was with at the time did a big merge with another large healthcare system. And so structurally, they looked at, naturally where they could minimize on positions, and that was one. And so really throughout most of the pandemic, I was by myself. And then I, at some point ended up getting a data analyst, and then that dissolved. So it was really interesting to see. And, I have to say, I look at a lot of healthcare systems, and I think I'm very grateful and fortunate now where I'm at, that they really do see the need and the importance of the role of infection prevention. So we structurally and FTE wise are in a very great position, but really a lot of other healthcare systems aren't. And I don't think it's intentional. I just don't think that people really have an idea of the need or importance of infection prevention. I think now, post-pandemic, CMS, Joint Commission, all these regulatory and accrediting agencies are starting to shine more light into focus and attention to it. But I don't think people really realize the impact of infection prevention. So,
yeah. What was because you said it was about a 350 bed hospital.
Yeah.
What was the average daily census?
Average census was about 240.
Wow. Okay. And then also, we should mention California is one of the most strict, right, with reporting and actually what you have to do. So I can't even.
So yeah, I think a lot of people really didn't believe me for quite some time when I said that I was by myself. And I learned so much, and for that I'm grateful. I was exhausted, especially during the pandemic when we first started. All the infection preventionists had to call their local public health offices to get approval for authorizing tests to be able to test people that were under suspicion. So being the only person, I felt like I had a newborn baby. I was up every 2 hours, on the phone with physicians. And I really do have to say that the organization I was with at the time, they were very supportive of whatever ideas I had. It was so fluid for everyone. Things were changing by the hour. But it was a lot because we still also had the two ambulatory centers on our license as well. So from a reporting standpoint, a surveillance standpoint, we were the first hospital in California to undergo a 4D seismic upgrade. So I was heavily involved with construction in that. And with construction naturally comes unexpected events that, you don't foresee that affect your facility. So it was a lot in a very short amount of time.
Yeah. So I imagine you didn't know what you were getting yourself into.
Oh no, I still am like, wow, how naive I was. I thought it was just hospital-acquired infections, cauda, eclopsy, C. diff, SSIs, had no idea, like, to the capacity of which it extended to. And that's the amazing thing about infection prevention is it's always something new. You can't ever get bored. You can't ever stop learning. So yeah, I was very naive going into the profession.
So taking the naiveness or naivety out of it, and the reason I ask is there's been a lot of people talk about with nurses getting paid quite a bit more now post COVID. It's quite a bit more of a challenge to convince a floor nurse to leave to do infection prevention, because a lot of times now, it used to be there was an attractive schedule associated with it and pay, whereas now it doesn't seem to be the case all the time. So when it came to, and obviously you had an interest there to begin with, but was there something additional that also attracted you? Like, was it at the time, was it better pay or better hours, or did that even factor in?
No, honestly, it felt worse in the beginning, and I was like, wow, what am I doing? Because I think in most cases, the leniency of a bedside nurse is you have your 3 days a week, and you do your 12-hour shift, and depending on how you align your schedule, you could potentially work 6 days in a row and be off 9 days straight, and every other weekend off, be union, have the ability to do overtime. So there was nothing enticing from a salary standpoint or a scheduling standpoint that was intriguing to me. I mean, a typical 8-hour day, like, if you have kids and things like that, that's maybe for some people more feasible of getting home. When I was leaving for work, it was dark. When I was bedside and when I was getting home, it was dark. So, and, I do have 2 children. So that was maybe the only benefit to it, but really it was just more of like, this was something I absolutely had interest in. And, I sometimes think, I'm like, man, I miss my 3 days a week and clocking in and out. And once I get home, I'm home. But I'm very happy with the decision that I made and, exploring the profession.
That's awesome. Obviously, there's going to be a need for more people to join. As you mentioned, nursing school doesn't necessarily feature infection prevention. How do you, now that you've done it for 6 or 7 years, how would you go about convincing a floor nurse to try this out?
I really think it's more of, again, because you don't really have the full aspect of a background of what infection prevention entails from a nursing standpoint. I think some organizations do really well of educating that to the nursing staff, but I think it's more of, it really starts with outcomes, right? Of if you have interest in improving patient outcomes at a just very basic surface level, you don't have to know what goes into driving those initiatives, but seeing like, hey, people who are coming to the hospital shouldn't be leaving worse than they came in, or we shouldn't be giving people infections that they didn't come in with. If that is something that sparks an interest in a nurse's mind and drives passion to them to want to improve the outcomes that they see, that in itself is what infection prevention, is the basis of it. So I think that would probably be my speaking point. I do have to say though, I'm a nurse. I'm grateful for my background, but I think that, we haven't up until recently been looking at other fields and how much they have to offer to the world of infection prevention. And, I think we do a disservice if we're so focused on just bringing in nursing into infection prevention, because some of my best mentors that, I've had the pleasure of, knowing over the years have masters in public health or clinical lab specialists. And naturally your brain as a nurse, the way that your education is taught, doesn't go towards the lab regard or the public health field. You get, a semester of, a little bit of both, but the opportunity and the wealth of knowledge that they could bring and, develop a team and make your team versatile, those are the people that I want more to come into the field of infection prevention. Absolutely grateful for all the nurses, and will forever have a need for them in the field of infection prevention. But I would love to see the field and develop more with, MPHs and the lab backgrounds.
That's great. And then you mentioned, okay, so going back to your St. Bernardine position, you said you came in as a preventionist or specialist, whatever, manager left. You assumed her role. Did you get the manager title or no?
I did, but it wasn't for a few years. It was actually in the height of the pandemic. So my title for the first 3 years was an infection preventionist, and then it was
let's stop there. I want to focus in on that for just a second, because a lot of people deal with this. There's a lot of people managing programs out there that do not have the title they feel like they deserve, and so I want to know what it was like working with a preventionist title, knowing that you were the person at the hospital for this. So was that difficult? And then just kind of, I guess, vocalize the frustrations there, but then also how you managed to still influence and kind of create a culture there, even though you didn't have the title to kind of support that.
Yeah, so heavy loaded question, but
for sure, I'm trying to get the hot take.
To be honest with you, I think number one, it's how you feel appreciated as an employee or whatever, how you feel recognized. And what I have to say is I never felt less than without the title. I was quite literally doing everything. I was instituting policies, procedures, any new initiatives that we had. I was on call 24/7 consulting with surgeons, and they trusted me. And so to that regard, I didn't feel minimized without the title. Like I felt, and, to be honest, when I did get the transfer of title, nothing really changed in my world of recognition. But, at some point I thought about it and all the work I was doing, and knowing this was the field I was going to stay in, and I wanted to have a team. I wanted to teach people. I knew that I had to advance myself somehow, and to learn those leadership skills. But it was difficult to do because I didn't really have a quote unquote team to be a leader. And so at that time I actually was looking to leave, and I interviewed and was extended an offer. But the offer that I was given, it just felt very limiting in comparison to what I was doing. I was running a whole program by myself, and, I was going to be limited to only specific departments. And so it just didn't feel like the time, even though I would have had more support and less work. It just at the time didn't feel worth it. So, I was transparent with my organization about that. And it was at that time that they then promoted me to manager. And so it was nice for the incentives of, I got an increase in pay. I was now entitled to bonuses. I was entitled to leadership retreats and development that I wasn't before. And so that was like more of meaning to me rather behind the title per se. It was more of just knowing I was starting to get the tools under my belt that I needed to advance further within, my career in the profession. So it was hard. It was kind of like a gut punch in some ways when I was the one up in, the middle of the night, and, everybody would get a meeting invite once a year for their bonuses, and I wasn't included in that. And knowing that a lot of the metrics that I was behind, from an infection prevention aspect when it comes to your quality composites in big healthcare systems to where your bonuses are driven from, a big portion of that is infection prevention. And so in some ways, yeah, I would be sitting here lying if I said it didn't, turn me a certain direction at times. But when I really thought about like where I was at versus where I was trying to go, I knew that the experience that I gained there and the support I was given was just worth more than, the title a few years earlier.
So ultimately, ultimately, did you have to ask for the manager title, or was that just something they did in response to you, or for them worried they were going to lose you?
Yeah,
Or
so
how did that actually go?
I asked, I told them I was transparent and said I was looking to leave and that I was extended an offer. And mind you, the offer that I was extended, the pay was not, so the title wasn't, it wasn't going to be, it was going to be a lateral transfer of position of title. It was going to be from one IP, which is what I was there, as to another. And the pay was significantly more than what I was being given just as an IP. And so I told them, I was extended an offer and I'm considering it for the regard of it's more support on the team, it's less work, and it's more pay, and it's the same title. But I really did love the people that I worked with, and I wasn't ready to leave. I was learning so much. And so I told them, like I feel like I am deserving of a title change and to have an FTE under me and be given that opportunity to actually have a department that I can manage. And so it was in response to a request, and they really didn't hesitate. They gave me more than what I had asked for, so I was very grateful for that. But they were very transparent and told me that that was as far as it would go. What structurally based within that healthcare system, there wasn't director levels. There would never be more FTEs within the near future added to the department. So then at that point, after dissolving the last FTE that was within the department, aside from myself, I just was like, okay, I'm a manager of myself. Like this is, I had all my ducks in a row, and we were kind of an autopilot in the organization from our HI standpoint. We were having issues here and there, but really, we looked great metrics wise. And so I really left there feeling like I did absolutely everything that I could, was grateful for the opportunity, but it was just time to, move on and advance.
Do you think, and obviously it sounds like you had a great place to work and love the people around you, but do you think that title would have been given to you if you didn't ask? Like, you obviously stayed there 6 years. Do you think that ever would have happened if you didn't go in there and express some sort of,
honestly,
like,
no.
eagerness?
I think there's two things to that question of, I think it's rare to work for really any organization but healthcare system that will fight for you over you for yourself, right? Like you have to fight for your worth and like sell yourself to, show for that. But I think aside from it was I've learned a lot about myself throughout the pandemic and throughout the opportunity there. And I was just very, I wasn't ever looking or asking for more. I probably could have spoke up more and said like, hey, this is too much. I'm taking on too much. And that's on me. That's something I had to learn over time. But no, I don't think so, because it would have just seemed like I was content. And, how would they have ever known that I was wanting to advance further if I didn't vocalize that? So yeah, I don't think
There's a lot of people
so.
that are stuck in that situation
Mm-hmm.
and kind of ask us on the recruiting end for advice on what to do. And a lot of times the first question is, well, have you asked anybody? Have you said anything?
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's no. So I just curious your thoughts on
Yeah.
this. That's good. Okay, so you did this role. Obviously, became a manager. You did it, what, 6 years or so? Is that?
No, so I was in the manager role for almost 3 years before leaving, and 2 years prior was just as the IP.
Okay, so then was your next position then the position you're in now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so go ahead and share kind of what you're over now and what kind of the makeup of your staff is.
Yeah, so I am now the director of the San Bernardino County service area for Kaiser Permanente, which is the largest service area for the SoCal Hawaii region for KP. And we have clinics as well. So it's over 2 medical centers predominantly, and then there is about 14 clinics. And within our team, there's, aside from myself, a total of 8 FTEs within the department. So very different, going from something so small to something so great. But it's only been a month, and it's been, a learning curve for sure, but amazing just to see the resources and the support of what this healthcare system puts into their departments.
I will say it's very uncommon to be in the position you're in with the years of experience you have. So that's awesome. I think hearing about your first position, it makes a lot of sense as to why. But I still want to hone in. Like, I think, and I've recruited specifically in infection for 12 years now, so I've got a pretty good idea of what the career path looks like. And anybody that asks, I'll say, typically your first step is working with a team. Then it's managing a program, probably as a sole preventionist by yourself. And the next step would be managing people in a department that you run. And the next step would be managing people across multiple facilities. So surprisingly, even though this is only your second position, I think you've actually covered the full gamut of that for varying reasons. So it's interesting. You actually have checked all those boxes. But when you jumped into this role, obviously it's a big change. You're talking about multiple hospitals. How many total beds do you have?
Oh gosh, well, at one medical center, it's about 430, and the other one is about 220. So
okay,
yeah, quite a bit.
Even that, typically, if you jump to the multiple facilities, you're talking about 150 bed hospitals or something on that size. But you've jumped into 2 pretty significant facilities and a large team. So obviously you've been in the role for about a month now, so there's still a lot of things kind of flying at you, I'm sure. But what's been the biggest surprise so far, as for your day-to-day goes?
Really for me, the biggest surprise, I don't want to, I don't want this to come across like I'm minimizing the previous healthcare system I was with, because they were incredible, but really the attention to the importance of the infection prevention department at the executive level, of the involvement that infection control has, the way that they look to them to sit a part of multiple committees, that has kind of been the most shocking thing to me, of how heavily involved infection prevention is. So that's, like I said, the previous healthcare system, whatever ideas I had, they were amenable to it, and the physicians were great, but it wasn't, infection prevention wasn't like a thought on every new initiative that was being, instituted. And now, it is different. The culture is different, because they're magnet facilities that I'm at. So that's very different of the culture of nursing too, of the way that they perform and are expected to perform, always at the highest level of quality care and delivery. So that's been a difference and eye-opener of change of culture, I would say.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of other things that kind of factored into this jump. So you, obviously, it still blows my mind that you were able to accomplish everything as a sole preventionist, being that big of
Thank you.
Especially through COVID. It's just a lot. I mean, how many hours a week were you putting in, do you think?
Oh gosh.
I'm sure it varied, but
it did, but I remember that there was a day that I was there over 65 hours in a week. And sometimes I wasn't leaving until 11 p.m. at night. And that was at the beginning of the pandemic, when we were turning full units. And these are like 45 bed units, into full negative pressure air spaces, because at the time that was what we were expected to do. And the staff were terrified, not only the nursing staff, the EVS staff. And so the leadership team there was incredible. And we all made the agreement that, hey, if we're expecting them to perform in these areas, we need to be visibly present. And so a lot of the time I was just hanging out in the halls watching nurses or ancillary staff don and doff their PPE and be reassuring to them, like, no, you're good, you did that correctly, or, because everyone was scared. We didn't know at the time exactly how you could transmit or contract it, and people were scared to go home. They were scared to take it home to their loved ones. So a lot of the time I was staying there really late. And aside from that, we had construction still going on. Like I said, it was a very old hospital. So we had multiple encounters arise during this time of the pandemic also, that we were faced with challenges. I failed to mention that when we were at a critical staffing shortage, I went back to the bedside and worked in the ER, because I just, I knew the nurses were exhausted, they were tired, and I, the leadership team was very supportive of that, patient care comes first. So thankfully, I've always maintained my certifications. And so I was back at the bedside, and I did that also throughout the pandemic. And that kind of re-sparked my, love of, like, okay, this is why I came into it, but this is why I'm continuing to do what I'm doing, because I had a different way of applying my practice now, because I knew my practice from a different aspect of infection prevention. So I was instituting and delivering my care differently than when I first came into the bedside. So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's nice. So you were spending up to 65 hours a week, and that's on site. Did you have on call on top of that?
Oh yeah, it was, because it was just me for, the hospital. There was a moment of time that I got sick, and, I think my body was just wore down. And so I had, I think I took 3 days off because I was physically ill and could not come in. And my director at the time took call for me. But really throughout that, and I did take pride in that, of at the beginning of the pandemic, my personal cell phone number, I didn't have a work cell phone number, so my personal cell phone number went out to the whole hospital. And the president asked me, are you sure about this? And I said, yeah. And I said, how can, hospitals operate 24/7. I can't expect that people after hours aren't going to have questions, and that's not fair. So it was something that I took on very naively, but, it was a lot in the beginning, but people respected the boundaries and got comfortable knowing what to call for, what not. But it was a learning process. And we all got through it together. And I'm not going to say that it was because my personal cell phone number was out there, but I think when your staff believe in the initiatives and the processes that you're trying to implement, then you see the success. And a lot of the time they don't believe in it if they don't trust you. They're not going to trust you unless you're very, you're open. Like, yes, you have to have those boundaries and lines, but that was it was uncharted territory for everyone. So
This blows me away. I've got to say, and I've talked to so many IP professionals. I would say, just from what you've described, even if you did a horrible job, your work ethic alone and just the stuff that you're willing to do, that alone would put you in the position you're in.
Thank you. It might not be my best quality, how much I dive myself into work, but I'm passionate about it. And that was a big push for me to advance on, was, wanting to teach new IPs in the way that I was, I have built great mentorships over the years, and a lot of it came from ancillary areas that taught me what I know now. But I want to give that opportunity to an IP that I wasn't given. And so that's, it pays off.
Yeah, no doubt. And then to add to it, you've involved yourself with a lot of other associations and just kind of extracurricular stuff. So how on earth did you squeeze that in, number one? And then number two, why? I just kind of understand your overall philosophy. Is it just like a networking thing? Are you trying to learn, or what goes into that? And then how have you kind of gone about inserting yourself into those roles and positions?
Yeah, so I think the very first thing I was taught entering infection prevention is, you join your local APIC chapter. And I was familiar with associations, within, ENA or whatever for emergency nurses. But I didn't realize how much APIC extended, like, nationally. And so I attended my first APIC chapter meeting a month into the profession of assuming the role. And I learned so much of, from people within my state, because it was, locally, and what they were doing. And it was just so intriguing to me to hear people being published and going and speaking for WHO. And so that was like, something to really look up to. So I really didn't do a ton in regard to anything my first year and a half year. I was just a part of my local APIC chapter, attended conferences. And then within my job description, there was a caveat that said, like, you must attempt to take your CIC within your first 3 years. Well, I had learned so much already between various areas of construction, employee health, high-level disinfection, that when I looked at the domains for your CIC, I'm sorry, also because I had to join someone's office with a background noise. I was like, why? Everyone told me you're going to fail your first time. It's a very difficult test, and I never failed a test in my life. I've always been so, like, my academics have always meant so much to me. So that scared me and really didn't feel encouraging. And so I decided, I was like, I should take it. It was at my second year during the pandemic, so I was studying also. And I was like, I should just try and take it now, because if I fail, I at least have another year to try and study and obtain it. So I studied and I passed, thankfully. And, I have, like, I likely sound biased, now saying I sit on the certification board, but I really did take it as something like, I have to have this because it makes me more credible at just like a basic competency level of showing, like, I believe in the evidence-based practices behind infection prevention, why we're doing what we're doing. And so I just kind of told myself I had no choice, but to get it. And then during that time, we were in our ICU at the previous system I was with, we were having a lot of infections, and the physician lead of the ICU is phenomenal. And he, got some fellows and residents, and we decided to apply for publication. And so we were doing that. During that time, we ended up driving down our numbers, like, incredibly within the ICU of infections. And so we got, published from reducing catheter-associated urinary tract infections and then central line-associated bloodstream infections. And then I think an email came out from APIC of nominations or applications for board of directors for both APIC and CBIC. And CBIC had an opening nomination for a new CIC, meaning, like, you had to have had it for like the less than 2 years, or obtained it in less than 2 years. So I applied for it, and I really, truthfully, didn't think I was going to get it. I had an interview and with various leaders that sit on the board, and now I've been doing that since the beginning of January, and it's just been such an incredible experience and a true pleasure to have met the people that are a part of the board currently. I mean, Elaine Larson, I think anyone in the field of infection prevention knows who she is. So being, able to sit alongside her and hear her experiences, and just even, advice from a very basic, surface level, has just been really, really empowering and a really great experience. And so people ask me, like, why CBIC? Why you haven't been doing this that long? But I think it was how scared I was to sit for my certification because it was, told to me like, this is not a test you're going to pass. It's too difficult. And so I thought about that. I'm like, well, why is the pass rate so low then? Why, what does the test need, and how do we make it more approachable to IPs that are either seasoned or new in the field to want to get their certification? And so learning even just about that whole process has been a learning curve for me, because I knew nothing about test development or things like that, but really seeing the work that goes into that exam, and all really at a volunteer basis of test development questions and reviews, it's been a really great experience, and very grateful for that opportunity.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Voice for Infection Prevention. We hope you found our discussions informative and insightful. Remember to subscribe to our podcast for more conversations with experts in the field, and don't forget to leave us a review to let us know what you think. For additional resources and to stay updated on the latest news in infection prevention, visit our website at voiceforip.com. Thank you again for listening. Until next time, stay safe and continue your commitment to excellence in infection prevention.